Welcome to your next video lesson on proportions as graphs and tables. For this lesson, you will need your notes you were given in class, a pencil or pen to take notes, highlighter, marker, or colored pencil because it will help when we are graphing these on the coordinate plane, and a calculator is permitted for this unit. Let's get started on your notes. Just as a refresher, proportional relationships may be represented as a ratio table. We have practiced these in class. And just as a refresher also, once you have written these as a ratio table, we can then take that ratio table and place that information on a graph. Proportional relationships must pass through the origin. And remember, the origin is represented by the coordinates 0, 0 on the coordinate plane. And that's that center point where the two axes meet. It's been a while since we studied the coordinate plane, so you might want to look back at your coordinate plane notes from the past just to refresh your memory. So if you look at this example, this is an example of a proportional relationship. This line passes through the origin. So we would say that is a proportional relationship. If you look at this example, this one is not proportional. It does not pass through the origin. If you look at this one is not a proportion because it does not pass through the origin. The origin is right there in the center of that coordinate plane, and the second and third examples do not pass through it, just the first one. So most of the time, especially in 6th grade, you're just going to be looking at quadrant 1, which is that top right section. So you won't be seeing the entire coordinate plane. But if you were looking at the entire coordinate plane, you would see it like this. So we're going to be looking at it both ways. And I just wanted you to see what it would look like if they gave you an entire graph. So let's review what it looks like to graph on the coordinate plane. To graph the x coordinate, remember that's the first number in your ordered pair, you move left if it's negative, right if it's positive. We did this way back before winter break, so let's refresh this just real quick. The first number in your ordered pair moves left or right on the coordinate plane. Left if it's negative, right if it's positive. Once you have moved that left or right direction, then you move the y coordinate. And the y coordinate is the one that flies, which means it moves up if it's positive or down if it's negative. And remember, when you're graphing, you always graph the x before the y. We always said that saying, walk before you fly, because you have to go left or right before you go up or down. So draw a little Superman or something to help you remember to walk before you fly. Something that's going to help you remember that little saying, like a Superman or an ant or something to help you remember that you have to walk. Remember, we did that elevator saying where you had to go walk to the elevator and go up and down. Before you go up and down the elevator, you have to walk to the elevator. So either a Superman or an elevator or something on your paper to help you remember that saying so you know to go left or right before you go up or down with your ordered pair. Remember, an ordered pair looks like this. You have an x and then a y. The x is always the first number. the y is the second number. And when you're looking at your ordered pairs, they're not going to be in parentheses like this. They're going to come out of the ratio table, and we're going to talk about what that looks like in just a minute. Your nugget, again, is to draw some sort of picture next to walk before you fly, either an elevator or Superman or something that helps you remember to walk before you fly, meaning that you have to move the X before the Y. So let's talk about the steps when you're going from a table to a graph. So if we're going from a ratio table to a graph, number one, you need to complete the ratio table first. That means cross multiply and divide, the steps that you have to do to complete that ratio table. Make sure that ratio table is completely filled in. Sometimes they're going to give you the first sections, and then you would just multiply by your factors to fill in that table all the way. Multiply by 2, then multiply by 3, then multiply by 4. Sometimes they may have different ones filled in, and then you'll cross multiply and divide to fill in the ones that are missing. It depends on how it's set up. Once your ratio table is filled in, then you're going to label the axis. The bottom one will be your X. The one on the left will be your Y. And then you're going to label the X and the Y with the units from your table. Again, the X is your bottom, the very bottom of your graph, and the Y is the left that goes up and down. So if you look at number 3, it's going to help you. We're going to talk about how we break the tables apart. Remember, your tables can either be vertical, like the one on the left, or horizontal, like the one on the right. If it is vertical, then the first column is going to be the X value. If it is horizontal, then the top row is going to be the X value. So go ahead and fill this in your table. The X is the first column, so draw an X and then draw an arrow. And then if it is horizontal, like the second example, put in an X in the top row and then draw an arrow. So those are all your X values. Those are going to be what you put in the bottom. That would be your numbers at the bottom of your graph. Then, of course, the second part of your table are all your Y values. So go ahead and fill that in your second part of your table and draw your arrow going that way. So that's how we break down our ratio table. Part of it's your X values, part of it's your Y values. And once you have that filled in, you can use different colors to help you break those down. But then, so you know you've got X's and Y's, those in each row, in each column, are going to make up your ordered pair. Looking at number 4, the tables you see here are the same ones at number 3. I just cut and paste them without anything. Those are still the blank ones. But if you look at number 4, it says graph each point, meaning each row or column, and then connect them to form a straight line. So with the X's and the Y, if your table is vertical, each row, meaning where I have circled, will become an ordered pair. So that each X and Y, like what's in that circle, will become an ordered pair. If you look at the horizontal table, each column will become an ordered pair. And that's what you're going to graph. And once you have graphed all of those different parts, then you form a straight line, and that becomes your final graph. And just as a reminder, proportional relationships must always pass through the origin. And if you want to write down what the origin is, remember that's 0.00. Sometimes they may put 0.00 in a table, and you can look for that when they say is it proportional, but they don't always put that point on a ratio table. So let's do 2 practice problems. Tabitha uses 2 cups of flour to make 10 cupcakes. How many cupcakes can she make with 8 cups of flour? Create a ratio table and then graph the results on the table or the graph provided. So first thing we're going to do is take that 2 cups of flour and 10 cupcakes and create the ratio table. Cups of flour over cupcakes. So cups of flour becomes my X and cupcakes becomes my Y. Take your 2 cups and your 10 cupcakes and put it in for your X and your Y. To create my table, I'm going to multiply by 2, and that gets 4 over 20. Then multiply by 3, and I get 6 over 30. Multiply by 4, and I get 8 over 40. And now I have my ratio table filled in. I now need to take those numbers and fill in and label my graph on the coordinate plane. Remember, this is just in quadrant 1, so I'm just going to fill in the bottom. Down at the very bottom is where my X is going to go, so I'm going to label mine. What I did is I skipped every 2, so that would be like half and then 1, 1 1/2, 2, 2 1/2, 3, 3 1/2, 4. So I'm skipping 1 line and going all the way to 12. And I'm going to label that as cups of flour because that's what my label is for my X's. And then I'm going to go ahead and label 10, 20, 30, 40 because I'm counting by 2s. And then those are my numbers of cupcakes. And remember, we said that every set of numbers in my columns is an ordered pair. So my X is 2, my Y is 10. So if I go over 2 and then up 10, there's my point. That is my first ordered pair. My second ordered pair is going to be 4 20ths. My third ordered pair is going to be 6 30ths. And my final ordered pair will be 8 40ths. And then once I've gotten all my ordered pairs on there, I'm going to draw a straight line and connect them. Notice that when I started, I didn't have any cups of flour and I didn't have any cupcakes, so I was at 0, 0. It's a proportion because I went through the origin. So there's my first example. Make sure you have that all written down. Pause the video if you need to. Example number 2. Oscar plays soccer every Saturday. He scored 15 goals the last 3 games. How many goals would he score in 12 games? Create a ratio table and graph the results on the graph provided. Notice with this ratio table, nothing is filled in. You need to pick out what are the 2 units being compared. There's nothing in the first sentence, but if you look in the second sentence, everything you need is right there. Goals and games. So let's write that in. Goals to games are my 2 units. Then fill in the numbers they give you. 15 goals to 3 games. And then complete your ratio table to continue going. Times 2, I get 30 over 6. Times 3, I get 45 over 9. Times 4, I get 60 over 12. Now that I have my entire ratio table all filled in, I need to label my graph. Now this one's a little bit different. I'm going to go ahead and do it by 5s, but I'm going to skip 2 lines just for the sake of space. So I got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. There's all of the things that I need, and those are my goals that were scored per game. Then I need to label the number of games. and I'm counting all the way up to 12, skipping 2 to get there, and those are the number of games. So I skipped and did one number every 2 lines. Now I need to label, put my coordinates on. This time I didn't circle them, but just like last time, every column is an ordered pair. So my X is 15, my Y is 3. Go over 15 and up 3, and there's my point. Go over 30 and up 6, and there's my next point. Go over 45, up 9, and there's my next point. Over 60, up 12, and there's my last point. Once I have all of my points on the grid, then I'm going to connect them with a line. When I started, Oscar had played no games, had no goals. I passed through the origin, so I know it's a proportion. Make sure you have all of this information recorded before you move on. Pause the video if you need to. And now it's time for you to log in, complete your homework quiz, and show what you know.